Let's get some business news for you now. Kate Moody is with us in the studio. Hi there, Kate.
Hi, Laura.
And we're starting with the latest in this ongoing battle between the Trump administration and the Chinese technology giant Huawei.
Yeah, lawyers for Huawei have entered a not guilty plea in a U.S. courtroom where the company now faces trial next year. The charges, which were filed in January, include conspiracy and attempts to steal trade secrets, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. Prosecutors accuse Huawei of stealing robotics technology from a T-Mobile lab near Seattle. Now, separately, Canada has to decide by tomorrow, March 1st, whether to officially begin extradition hearings against Huawei's CFO. Meng Wanzhou, who's also the daughter of the firm's founder, is wanted in the U.S. to face charges of fraud and violating U.S. sanctions on Iran. The Trump administration has been trying to convince its allies to block Huawei technology from the development of 5G networks in their countries on security concerns. Now, there remains little clarity about how or when the UK will leave the European Union as the countdown to the March 29th deadline continues. Earlier this week, the British farming industry was singled out in a government report as being at a particular risk if the UK leaves without a deal. We've been speaking to Guy Smith, the Deputy President of the National Farmers Union of England and Wales, about what's at risk.
We feel that a hard Brexit, a no-deal Brexit, will be catastrophic for many sectors of British agriculture. I mean, I myself, I export malting barley into Germany normally. So next harvest, I will harvest my malting barley. And normally, the boats are being arranged now for that export opportunity. But that's not happening because nobody knows whether when that barley leaves the UK, it will be subject to a tariff, whether the paperwork's in place. So it's just a constant insecurity. We are convinced we need an orderly phased Brexit. We need to leave the European Union in an orderly manner. British agriculture is heavily integrated with the European Union. And after 40 years of trading and dealing, we just don't think you can unpick that overnight. We're stuck in, as I say, biological cycles. I mean, we hear of some farmers sort of stockpiling crop protection materials or fertilizers. So that's something we can do, I suppose, to prepare for a hard Brexit, which might be disruptive. But on the whole, we're at the mercy of the weather and biological cycles, and you can't manage these things very easily. We just need to implore our politicians on both sides of the channel to make sure we do not have a no-deal Brexit.
A report from the World Bank suggests only 6 countries currently offer equal legal rights for men and women. The findings suggest the world is missing out on $160 trillion worth of wealth solely due to gender inequality. Anka Ula tells us more.
Women around the world today are still granted only 3/4 of men's legal rights. That's according to the World Bank. Research over the past 10 years found that women are equal to men, legally speaking, in just 6 global economies, allowing them to work, earn money, and enjoy the same freedoms. Those countries are Belgium, Denmark, France, Latvia, Luxembourg, and Sweden. World Bank CEO and interim president Kristalina Georgieva says the consequences of such low equality are not just social.
The world is missing a staggering $160 trillion of wealth because we are holding women back. So to succeed, societies ought to tap into the potential of all its people, men and women.
Despite the dismal global performance, this year's report showed an undeniable step in the right direction. A decade ago, not a single country received a perfect score on the Equality Index. Improvements were made across the board, with South Asia showing the biggest regional progress and Sub-Saharan Africa passing the most reforms. But even countries at the top have work to do. In France, though a law passed in 1972 requiring companies to pay men and women equal salaries for equal work, women still earn some 24% less than men. Starting March 1st, companies with more than 1,000 employees will face fines if they can't prove they're taking steps to improve gender equality when it comes to salaries, pay raises, and promotions.
And you can hear more from the World Bank's interim president in this week's People and Profit. That's on the France 24 website now. The U.S. economy grew 2.9% last year, matching the pace of 2015, the highest since 2005. But new data shows signs of a slowdown to come. Expansion slowed to a still better than expected 2.6% in the final 3 months of the year, a sharp drop from 3.4% in the third quarter and 4.2% in the second. The figures are close to the president's 3% growth target, although economists caution it's unlikely to continue. Analysts say the Trump administration's tax cuts boosted growth in the beginning of this year, but the effect began to wear off. Weak consumer spending and trade tensions then weighed on business activity towards the end of 2018. That phenomenon could continue, according to predictions. Let's check in on the day's trading action now. Wall Street's fairly muted despite those better-than-expected growth figures. The abrupt ending to the Trump-Kim summit has raised concerns about geopolitical instability. You can see Wall Street dipping under the flat line in the last hour or so of trade. The major European indices closed mixed. The FTSE 100 was dragged down in part by shares of Rolls-Royce, which sunk nearly 3% in London as it reported losses for the last year and withdrew a bid to power Boeing's new commercial aircraft. Boeing now expected to choose between engines by Pratt & Whitney and the Franco-American group CFM. Shares of Air France KLM continued to fall on Thursday as the French and Dutch governments gear up for a possible confrontation over ownership. Finance ministers will meet in Paris on Friday to discuss the situation, which Bruno Le Maire described as unfriendly and more brutal than a corporate raider. Cole Stangler reports.
A bold move after years of mounting tension. The Dutch government's decision to boost its stake in Air France KLM to 14% surprised many, but it comes in response to a series of upheavals at the airline holding company. When the alliance was first born in 2004, both sides were promised autonomy, but the French dominate the group's board of directors, and the French state retains nearly a quarter of voting rights at the company.
This action from the Dutch won't be enough because, first off, the corporation's rules give double voting power to Air France, and secondly, what matters in a corporation is its executive.
The arrival of new CEO Ben Smith last August only compounded Dutch fears of losing influence. In addition to further integrating the two airlines, Smith has butted heads with KLM boss Peter Elbers. He's also pursued an overhaul of the alliance's leadership structure, creating a new group CEO committee, including the chief executives of both airlines and the French CFO of the alliance. It's seen as keeping the balance of power in Paris. Another source of tension, while Air France remains bigger, KLM has proven more profitable in recent years. In 2018, it accounted for 4/5 of the alliance's profits, enjoying relative labor peace as Air France suffers from costly strikes and tensions with unions. While the government of Mark Rutte may tout its pro-business credentials, this isn't its first embrace of protectionist policies. It's also helped thwart attempts from foreign firms to take over the country's postal service and top telecom company.
Right, so all eyes on that meeting, 8 a.m. Paris time. And of course, France 24 will be following all the developments. Laura.
All right, stay tuned for that, Kate. Thank you very much indeed. Kate Moody there with the business. We're taking a short break. Don't go away. Much more for you in just a few moments.